Tonight's story comes from the legendary writer Satyajit Ray, a master of mystery and imagination. This tale is called Remembrain, a story where science meets fear and memory itself becomes dangerous. January 2nd. What a beautiful morning. The sun is shining brightly everywhere, and the blue sky is dotted with fluffy white clouds. It feels as if autumn has arrived by mistake. Looking at this sky fills my heart with a pure, astonishing wonder, much like the feeling of holding a freshly laid chicken egg. Of course, there was another reason for my joy. After a long time, I finally get to rest. My machine was completed just this morning. I've returned from the garden to my laboratory and have been sitting for a long time, quietly staring at the machine, filled with a deep sense of peace. From the outside, it doesn't look like much. It looks like a modern hat or a helmet. Inside this helmet's shell, there are 72,000 intricate wires forming a complex neural network. This machine is the result of 3.5 years of tireless effort. Let me give you a simple example to explain what it does. Just a little while ago, around 8 o'clock, Bush telephoned the police to check on the news. The driver, Heinz Newman, had not been found yet. So, did Newman and the formula for BX377 find their eternal resting place in the snow? March 10th, 12 a.m. Last night, I couldn't sleep until 2 in the morning, so I went outside. The daze hasn't completely worn off. It will only wear off once I return to the normal environment of Giridij. I never thought such a terrible incident could happen in such a picturesque country. Yesterday morning, as per our plan, I, Bush, and the Swiss police officer Hans Berger set off for the accident site. My watch showed 8:45. The roads were icy here and there, and the mountains and their peaks were covered in snow. Even with the car windows closed, the agitated state of the trees told me that the wind was blowing quite hard. Bush was driving, I was next to him, and Berger was in the back. These include images, events, names, faces, tastes, smells, songs, stories, and countless bits of detailed information. A normal person's memories from before the age of 2 fade away very early. My own memory, however, is many times sharper than that of a normal person. I even have some memories from when I was 11 months old. Of course, a few of my very early childhood memories had also become blurred. For example, when I was 1 year and 3 months old, I saw Mr. Blackwell, the magistrate of that time, with a stick and a dog, walking along the banks of the Ushri River. The dog was white, but I couldn't remember its breed. Today I put on the machine and recalled the scene. Immediately, the dog's appearance became clear, and it told me it was a bull terrier. I have named the machine Remembrain, which means the machine that helps the brain to remember. I wrote an article about it yesterday and sent it to the journal Nature in England. Let's see what happens. February 23rd. My article has been published in Nature, and ever since, I've been receiving countless letters. People from Europe, America, Russia, and Japan have all expressed interest in seeing the machine. I've been requested to demonstrate it at a scientific conference in Brussels on May 7th. Many in the scientific community are finding it hard to believe that such a machine could exist, although they know of my capabilities. The truth is, the intricate mystery of memory remains beyond the grasp of science. I myself have only been able to understand that when a piece of information enters the brain, it carves out a place for itself as a memory. I believe each memory is a chemical substance akin to an atom, and each memory has a unique chemical structure and formula. As time passes, memories fade because no substance can remain in the same state forever. My machine channels electrical energy into the brain to revitalize the memory substance, bringing back old memories. Some might ask how I created such a machine without completely unraveling the mystery of memory. My answer is that we know 100 times more about electricity today than we did a century ago. Yet despite this incomplete knowledge, the 19th century saw the invention of astonishing electrical devices. My Remembrain machine was created in the same way. After the article was published in Nature, I received one letter that I found particularly amusing. An American billionaire industrialist, Hiram Horenstein, wrote that while writing his autobiography, he discovered he couldn't clearly remember the events before he was 27. He offered me a generous fee to use my machine to help him recall those events. I wrote back in a polite tone that I did not create this machine to satisfy the whims of eccentric American millionaires. March 4th, half an hour after reading about a terrible accident in Switzerland, which saddened me, a long telegram on the same subject arrived. This must be what they call telepathy. The news was this: two famous scientists, Otto Lubin of Switzerland and Dr. Hieronymus Schering of Austria, were traveling in a car from Landeck, Austria to Wallenstadt, Switzerland. For some time, these two scientists had been conducting classified research on a secret subject. The driver was in the front, and Lubin and Schering were in the back. The car plunged into a ravine while driving on a mountain road. A shepherd from a nearby village found the wrecked car 1,000 feet below the road. Amazingly, Dr. Schering survived. His body got stuck in a bush only 30 feet below the road. As soon as news of the accident reached Wallenstadt, the Swiss biochemist Norbert Busch rushed to the scene. Lubin and Schering were on their way to Busch's home for a few days of rest. Busch brought an unconscious Schering back to his house in his spacious Mercedes. This much was in the paper. The rest I learned from Busch's telegram. I should mention that I have known Busch for 10 years. We met at a scientific conference in Florence. Busch wrote that although Schering's body has almost no injuries, a head injury has caused him to lose his memory completely. Another piece of information is that the car's driver has disappeared, along with all the research papers. The attempts of doctors, psychologists, and hypnotists to restore Schering's memory have been completely unsuccessful. Busch has asked me to Wallenstadt with my machine immediately. He will cover all expenses. He concluded the telegram by saying, "Dr. Schering is an extraordinarily talented individual. The scientific community will be forever grateful to you if you can restore him to life. Please let me know what you decide as soon as possible. I will not get another chance like this to test and demonstrate the full extent of my machine's capabilities. I must start making preparations for Wallenstadt today. My machine is fully portable. It weighs only 8 kilos. Paying extra for luggage on the plane will not be an issue." March 8th. I arrived in the small town of Wallenstadt, 60 kilometers from my location, at 8:45. I reached Zurich this morning and then drove here in Busch's car along a beautiful path. Breakfast will be served shortly. I am writing in my diary in my room while I have a moment. Biochemist Norbert Busch's About 10 minutes after he left, just as Clara had brought lemon tea and cake to the table for everyone, the reason for my strange unease suddenly became clear. As soon as it did, I surprised everyone by jumping up from the sofa and turning to Bush. "Let's go now. We have to go to Altdorf." "What do you mean?" Ulrich and Bush asked at the same time. "I'll explain later. There's no time to lose." Seeing such eagerness in a man my age, Bush and Ulrich immediately got up. As I took the stairs 3 at a time, I said to Bush, "Do you have a weapon with you? I didn't bring mine." "I have a Luger automatic." "Take it, and if the police officer is here, tell him to come with us. Also, inform Altdorf so the police there are ready." We 4 men took my machine from the room and got into Bush's car, speeding toward Altdorf. Bush was sharing and his maid, whose name I think is Maria. Besides them, 2 policemen are guarding the house around the clock. Sharing is in a room to the east. The landing and the staircase to the ground floor are between our 2 rooms. I did, of course, get a good look at Sharing when I arrived. He is a man of medium height, between 45 and 50, with a bald spot at the back of his golden hair. His face is a mix of square and round. When I saw him, he was sitting in a chair by the window, fiddling with a wooden doll. He turned his head when I entered the room, but did not get up from the chair. I understood that he had forgotten even the basic courtesy of getting up when someone enters the room. There was something strange about his eyes. I asked him, "Do you wear glasses?" Sharing's left hand automatically went up to his eyes and then came down again. Bush said, "His glasses broke. A new pair has been ordered." After seeing Sharing, we went to the living room. After some small talk, Bush sheepishly said, "To be honest, I wasn't very enthusiastic about your machine. I sent you the telegram partly at my wife's request." "Is your wife a scientist too?" I asked, looking at Clara. Clara smiled and replied, "Not at all. I work as my husband's secretary. I wanted you to come because I have deep respect for India. I've read many books about your country and know a lot about it. I believe that if Bush had any doubts about my machine, they will be gone by the end of today. This afternoon, we will try to open the closed door of Sharing's memory." Now, I couldn't help but ask about the driver. Bush said, "The police are investigating. The driver could be hiding in one of 2 places. One is 4.5 kilometers west of the accident site, in a forest called In the Forest. For the driver is ongoing in both places, as well as in the mountains." "How far is the accident site from here?" 85 kilometers. "The driver must have found shelter somewhere because it snows there at night. I fear he might have an accomplice and could have already passed the papers on to them." March 8th, 10:30 p.m. The fire is burning in the fireplace. Outside, a strong, cold wind is blowing. I can hear the whooshing sound of the wind, even though the window is closed. Bush is stunned by the display of my scientific genius tonight. It's hard to say who is my bigger fan now, him or his wife. At 6 o'clock this evening, we went to Sharing's room with my machine. He was still sitting in the chair, slumped over. When we entered, he stared at us blankly. Bush greeted him and said in a light, joking tone, "Today we're going to put a hat on you, okay? It won't cause you any discomfort. You can sit in your chair just as you are." "A hat? What kind of hat?" Sharing asked, his voice grave yet melodic, with a hint of unease. "Just look." I took the machine out of the bag. Bush took it from my hand and gave it to Sharing. Sharing fiddled with it like he had with the toy this morning, then handed it back to me. "It won't hurt, will it?" The injection the other day hurt. Assured that it wouldn't hurt, he seemed somewhat relieved and leaned back in the chair, his hands resting by his sides. I didn't see any other injuries on his exposed skin, except for a plaster on a wound on his neck. It was no trouble putting the helmet on Sharing. Then, as I pressed the red button, the battery attached to the helmet turned on. Sharing shivered, and his body became as rigid as wood. His eyes stared vacantly at the fire in the fireplace. There was an eerie silence in the room now. Except for Sharing, I could hear everyone's rapid breathing. Clara was standing by the door. The nurse stood motionless behind the bed, looking at Sharing in amazement. Bush and Ulrich leaned forward anxiously, standing on either side of Sharing's chair. I spoke to Bush in a low voice. "Do you want to ask the questions, or should I? It will work either way. You start." I took a small stool from the corner of the room and sat facing Sharing. Then I asked, "What is your name?" Sharing's lips moved. "Hieronymus Heinrich Sharing," came the answer. "For the first time," Bush exclaimed in a choked voice. He said his own name for the first time. I asked the second question. "What is your profession?" "Professor of physics." "Where were you born?" "Austria, Mukan, Innsbruck." I gave Bush a questioning look. Bush nodded, indicating that the answers were correct. I turned back to Sharing. "What is your father's name?" "Karl Dietrich Sharing." "Do you have any other siblings?" "I have a younger sister. My older brother passed away." "When did he pass away?" "In the First World War, October 1st, 1917. I looked at a stunned Bush between questions, and his slight nods confirmed that all of Sharing's answers were correct. "Did you go to Landeck?" "Yes." "For what purpose?" "I had work with Professor Lubin." "What work?" "Research." "On what subject?" "BX377. That's the code name for the research." I moved on with the questions. "Was the research successful?" "Yes." "What was it?" "We discovered the formula for a new type of atomic weapon." "Were you coming to Wallenstadt after completing the work?" "Yes." "Did you have the research papers with you?" "Yes." "And the formula?" "Yes." "There was an accident on the way?" "Yes." "What happened?" Bush put his hand on my shoulder. I know why. For some time, I had noticed a subtle restlessness in Sharing. He licked his lips once. His eyelids seemed about to flutter. The veins in his forehead were also bulging. Sharing stopped speaking. His breathing became rapid. I believe that an apathetic anxiety arose in him after revealing the secret research subject. I pressed the green button and shut off the battery. It would be unwise to ask any more questions in this state. The rest can wait until tomorrow. As soon as I removed the helmet, Sharing's head fell back. He let out a long sigh, closed his eyes, and then opened them a moment later, looking around and said, "Cigar? A cigar?" I wiped the sweat from Sharing's forehead. Bush seemed embarrassed. He cleared his throat and said, "There are no cigars. No one in this house smokes cigars. Will you have a cigarette?" Sharing didn't take it. Ulrich had taken out a cigarette from his pocket and offered it to him. I said, "Did you have your own cigar case?" "Yes, I did," Sharing said. He seemed exhausted and agitated. "A black case?" "Yes, yes." "Then Willie has it. Clara, would you mind looking for it?" Clara immediately went to find her son. The nurse took Sharing by the arm and helped him lie down on the bed. Bush went to the bed and smiled. "You remember now, don't you?" In reply, Sharing looked at Bush in surprise. Then he said in a slow voice, "Remember what?" Sharing's counter-question didn't please me at all. Bush also seemed dumbfounded. He quickly composed himself and said, "You gave the correct answers to our questions." "What questions? What did you ask me?" This time, I gave Sharing a summary of the questions and answers from the last few minutes. Sharing was silent for a while. Then he gently placed his right hand on his head, turned to me, and said, "What did you put on my head?" "Why do you ask?" "It hurts. It feels like countless pins are pricking me." "You already had a head injury. You got hurt while rolling down the side of the mountain, which is why you lost your past memories." Sharing looked at me foolishly and said, "What are you talking about? Why would I roll down a mountain?" The three of us exchanged glances. Clara returned. In her hand was the cigar case I had seen. She gave it to Sharing and said apologetically, "My son took it and kept it in his room at some point. I hope you don't mind." Bush cleared his throat again and said, "You must remember that you smoke cigars now, right?" Sharing's eyes closed as he held the cigar case. He really seemed exhausted. We understood it was time to leave his room. We put the remembering machine back in its bag and sat down in the living room. My mind was in a strange state, a mix of satisfaction and unease. Why would the memory disappear again after the helmet was removed? Was there something seriously wrong with Sharing's brain? The others, however, didn't seem as disappointed. Ulrich was full of praise for the machine. He said, "There's no doubt that this is a groundbreaking invention." When the repository of memory was completely empty, is it an easy thing to give the correct answers to so many questions in a row? Bush said, "It seems the door to his mind was so tightly shut that it doesn't stay open after it's been forced open. The only thing to do is wait for tomorrow. We'll have to put the helmet on him again tomorrow. Our job is just to get answers. We need to know what happened in the car before the accident. The police will do the rest." Around 8 o'clock, Bush telephoned the police to check on the news. The driver, Heinz Newman, had not been found yet. So, did Newman and the formula for BX377 find their eternal resting place in the snow? March 10th, 12 a.m. Last night, I couldn't sleep until 2 in the morning, so I went outside. The daze hasn't completely worn off. It will only wear off once I return to the normal environment of Giradij. I never thought such a terrible incident could happen in such a picturesque country. Yesterday morning, as per our plan, I, Bush, and the Swiss police officer Hans Berger set off for the accident site. My watch showed 8:45. The roads were icy here and there, and the mountains and their peaks were covered in snow. Even with the car windows closed, the agitated state of the trees told me that the wind was blowing quite hard. Bush was driving. I was next to him, and Berger was in the back seat. It took us an hour and 10 minutes to reach our destination. We stopped for 3 minutes at Remus. There were police there, and talking to them, I learned that there was still no news of Neumann. The search was in full swing, and a 5,000 franc reward had been announced for information leading to Neumann's capture. The scenery at the accident site was astonishingly beautiful. The ravine beside the road was 3,500 feet deep. Looking down, I could see a narrow river. I said to myself, if the papers have floated away in the river, there is no hope of recovering them. The road is so wide here that it is impossible for a car to fall into the ravine unless it is intentionally pushed or the driver suddenly loses his mind. I saw police on the side of the mountain and some jeeps and cars on the road. I realized that the search was thorough. We also started climbing down. The side of the mountain There was a walking path, and the slope was not very steep. In the distance, I could hear the melodious sound of a bell. I guess cows were grazing. Swiss cows have big bells tied around their necks. Their sound makes the beautiful natural environment even more pleasant. We needed to see where the car fell and where Lubin's body was found. There was a white carpet of snow everywhere, and snow fell in clumps from the branches of pine, beech, and ash trees from time to time. After searching for about 45 minutes, we didn't find a single piece of paper. But what I discovered, about 500 feet further down from the car's location, was unexpected. The discovery was mine. Everyone was looking for pieces of paper on the ground. My eyes, however, were also on the branches, leaves, and other things. As I came under a densely leafed oak tree and looked up, I noticed a small object through the gaps in the leaves that was neither paper nor snow. My eyesight is at least 10 times sharper than any policeman's. I knew at once that it was a piece of cloth. I gestured for Berger to come closer and pointed at the tree. As soon as he saw it, he nimbly climbed up the branches. Within a minute or so, I heard his excited voice in his mother tongue, German. "Da ist eine Leiche," he shouted, which means, "There is a corpse." Within 5 minutes, the body was brought down. Because it's a snowy country, the body was almost perfectly preserved despite being dead for so long. It was not hard to understand that this was the body of the driver, Heinz Neumann. In his coat pocket were his driving license and his personal identification card. Neumann's bones were also broken, and he had wounds on his face and hands. There was no doubt that he had been thrown from the car and rolled down the side of the mountain to die in the branches of this oak tree. So did Neumann slip and fall while pushing the car with Lubin and Schering, who were unconscious, into the ravine? Or did some other unknown person do this to him? In any case, the police no longer have to work to find Neumann. I should also mention that no research papers were found in Neumann's jacket pocket. If those papers are found in the ravine, it's good. Otherwise, the case of BX 377 ends here. We left for Waylandstadt at 11 o'clock. Both of us were physically and mentally exhausted. This was partly due to the exertion of climbing up and down the mountain, and partly from thinking about the accident. At the same time, for some reason, just like last night, something was bothering me. I had noticed something, or the absence of something, that had created a reaction in my mind for a moment, which had then sunk into the depths of my memory. I had the remembering machine with me. I didn't want to be without it, and I thought about putting it on and having Bush ask me questions to see what would happen. But then I realized I didn't even know what kind of questions to ask to bring the memory back. So I had to dismiss the thought from my mind. It had been cloudy since before we reached the house, and it started to drizzle just as we stopped in front of the gate. Schering was as stunned as we were to hear about the discovery of Neumann's body. He said, 2 people died, and 7 years of work went to waste. Then he sighed and said, "In a way, it's a good thing." We looked at Schering in a bit of surprise. He had a vacant look in his eyes. He said, "I never wanted to do research on a weapon of mass destruction. Lubin was the one who proposed it. I initially objected, but I got involved without realizing it, because Lubin was my close friend from college." Schering paused, turned to me, and smiled gently. "Do you know where the inspiration for this weapon came from? Since you're an Indian, I'll tell you specifically. Lubin knew Sanskrit. Some time ago, he read a wonderful Sanskrit manuscript kept in a museum in Berlin. The name of the manuscript is Samarangana Sutradhara. There are countless descriptions of different weapons of war in it. After reading that manuscript, the idea for this weapon came to Lubin's mind. Anyway, maybe what happened will be for the best in the long run. I had heard the name Samarangana Sutradhara, but had not had the good fortune of reading it. Of course, one can understand that Indians once thought deeply about weapons of mass destruction just by reading the Mahabharata. There was no point in keeping Shearing here any longer. When we had left, he had supposedly called a friend in the town of Altdorf and asked him to come to pick him up. Altdorf is 75 kilometers west of here. Shearing's friend said he would come in the afternoon. The 4 men and 1 woman of us sat in the living room and chatted all afternoon. At 3:30, a stylish red car stopped in front of the house. A healthy-looking man, about 40 years old and over 6 feet tall, got out. He was wearing a leather jacket and corduroy pants. I guessed he was an avid climber from his sun-tanned appearance, and I later learned that he indeed loved climbing mountains and had climbed Switzerland's highest peak, Monte Rosa, 5 or 6 times, though his profession was law. Needless to say, this was Shearing's friend, named Peter Frick. Shearing bid farewell to all of us and praised my machine one more time before leaving for Altdorf. About 10 minutes after he left, just as Clara had brought lemon tea and cake to the table for everyone, the reason for my strange unease suddenly became clear. As soon as it did, I surprised everyone by jumping up from the sofa and turning to Bush. "Let's go now. We have to go to Altdorf." "What do you mean?" Ulrich and Bush asked at the same time. "I'll explain later. There's no time to lose." Seeing such eagerness in a man my age, Bush and Ulrich immediately got up. As I took the stairs 3 at a time, I said to Bush, "Do you have a weapon with you? I didn't bring mine." "I have a Luger automatic." "Take it, and if the police officer is here, tell him to come with us. Also, inform Altdorf so the police there are ready." We 4 men took my machine from the room and got into Bush's car, speeding toward Altdorf. Bush was an expert driver. Within a minute, he reached a speed of 120 kilometers per hour. In this country, passengers in the front seat have to buckle their seatbelts like plane passengers. This car, in fact, is built in such a way that it won't run without the seatbelts fastened. Not only that, if the car suddenly brakes, 2 soft cotton-like things immediately pop out of 2 compartments in the dashboard, saving the driver and passenger from smashing their faces. We, of course, didn't have to brake suddenly. A few seconds after passing the 30-kilometer marker, we saw Shearing's red car. The driver's calm and unhurried demeanor was clear from his driving. I said, "Pass it and stop." Bush went past it, honking his horn, and then stopped his car diagonally in the middle of the road a little further on, forcing Shearing's car to stop. The 4 of us got out of the car. Shearing and his friend also got out, looking surprised, and walked toward us. "What's the matter?" Shearing asked. None of the 4 of us had spoken a word during the journey. Perhaps my grave demeanor had kept the other 3 from daring to ask anything. So only I knew why we were on this mission, and therefore I had to be the one to speak. I walked forward. No matter how much Shearing tried to act normal, he couldn't hide his pale, dry lips. His friend Peter Frick stood 3 feet behind him. "I felt like having a cigar," I said calmly. "I got hooked after smoking your Dutch cigar yesterday. Do you still have the cigar case?" My simple words, spoken so casually, were like setting off a stick of dynamite. A revolver appeared in Shearing's friend's hand in an instant, and in that same instant it roared. I felt the bullet graze my right elbow and hit a corner of the roof of Bush's Mercedes. But the revolver was no longer in Peter Frick's hand, because with the roar of a second firearm, Frick's revolver was knocked to the road, and Frick, holding his right wrist with his left hand, sat on his knees on the road with a grimace. And Schering, with an inhuman shriek, he sprinted in the opposite direction, but Bush and Ulrich darted after him and jumped on him like tigers, pinning him. And I, the world-renowned scientist Trilokeshwar Shanku, placed my unique invention, the remembering machine, on Schering's head and pressed the button to activate the battery. Pinned by the two men, Schering stood still, his vacant stare suggesting he was meditating while looking at the distant snow-covered mountain peaks. Now my game begins. I address the questions to Schering. How did Dr. Lubin die? Suffocated. Did you kill him? Yes. How? By strangling him. Was the car moving then? Yes. How did the driver Neumann die? Neumann had a mirror in front of him. When he saw Lubin being murdered in the mirror, his steering wheel turned at that moment. The car fell into the ravine. And you fell with it? Yes. Did you plan to kill Lubin and Neumann and push them into the ravine? Yes. And then run away with the formula? Yes. What were you going to do with it? I would have sold it. To whom? To whoever paid the most. Do you have the formula papers with you? No. What do you have then? A tape. The formula is recorded on it? Yes. Where is the tape? In the cigar case. So it's not really a cigar case? Yes. I removed the helmet from Schering's head. The police officer walked over to Schering on the wet road, his footsteps echoing. Now I understand what a wonderful thing the brain is, and what a strange game memory plays. Yesterday, Schering asked for a cigar. Clara brought him the case, but he didn't smoke. I should have fully figured it out then, but I didn't. This morning, I didn't see any smell or sign of a cigar in his room. The cigar case should have been on the table next to the bed, but it wasn't. We sat and talked all afternoon today, but Schering still didn't smoke a cigar. The gunmetal case is now on my table in my room. When you open the lid, cigars come out, but when you press a nearly invisible button on the bottom opens up to reveal a tiny tape recorder with a microphone. I played the tape and found that all the information on BX377 is recorded on it in Schering's own voice. If I record something else on it, Schering's useless formula will be erased forever. Is that Willie's voice? He's humming a rhyme again. I took out the microphone and started the recorder.